Agnes Hartley sat by the kitchen window of her small terrace house in Southport, watching the early autumn drizzle slide down the glass. Her cat, Marmalade, purred on the windowsill, blissfully unaware that something inside Agnes had begun to stir. It had started 3 months ago, after a chance encounter with a local art exhibit at the library. She had stood for nearly an hour, transfixed by a digital landscape painted entirely on a tablet. Now, with 7 decades behind her, Agnes had enrolled in a digital art class offered every Saturday at the community library. She had saved for months, sewing alterations for neighbors, tucking the coins and small notes into an old biscuit tin beneath her bed. When the email came confirming her registration, she smiled quietly, heart fluttering like a schoolgirl's. But Marcus, her only son, was less than pleased when he overheard her on the phone speaking to a friend about it. "You're serious?" he had said, lips curling. "Mum, you don't even use your mobile without help, and you want to do digital painting?" "It's never too late to learn," Agnes had replied, gently but firmly. Marcus had exchanged a look with his wife, Claudia, who smirked as if it were all a harmless joke. In the days that followed, Agnes noticed strange behavior. Marcus had asked for her online login details to check her gas bill, and offered to handle her monthly expenses. He insisted she was too kind-hearted and might get scammed online. Agnes, always the trusting sort, had reluctantly agreed. But on the morning of her first class, she put on her best grey coat, packed her sketchpad for inspiration, and walked briskly to the library, only to be told that her name was not on the list. "It says here the registration was cancelled," said the young woman at the desk, scanning the computer. "Refund processed to your registered card yesterday." Agnes felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her fingers trembled. Her face flushed. She had not cancelled anything. On the walk home, the drizzle had turned to a steady rain. Marmalade greeted her with a soft meow, but Agnes walked past her, straight to the small writing desk in the sitting room. She opened her laptop. It took her 4 attempts to log in, hands still shaking. There, in her emails, she found it. A cancellation confirmation. A refund receipt. Sent not to her address, but forwarded from Marcus's account, which she had allowed him to link, just for emergencies. And then, the final straw, a photo Claudia had posted on social media that morning. Smiling into the camera, she held up a glittering necklace with a sapphire pendant. "Early birthday surprise from my darling Marcus," the caption read. Agnes stared at the screen. Her mouth tightened. She reached for the telephone. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Marcus sounded distracted, like he was halfway through a spreadsheet. "Mum? Everything all right?" Agnes paused for a beat. Then, with a calmness honed by decades in a classroom, she spoke. "I went to the library this morning, Marcus. They told me my class was cancelled." There was a moment of silence. Just long enough to reveal guilt. "Oh, that. Well, Mum, I was going to talk to you about that. It's just, look, I know you were excited, but I honestly didn't think it was the best use of your time or money. Digital art. Really? I paid for it myself," Agnes replied, her voice steady. "Well, yes, technically, but you let me handle your finances, remember? I just thought it would be smarter to put the money towards something more meaningful. Claudia's birthday is coming up, Anne." "And so you bought her a necklace with my refund," Agnes interrupted. Marcus stammered. "It wasn't like that." "But it is exactly like that. You took money that didn't belong to you and spent it without asking. That's theft, Marcus." "Mum, come on. Don't be dramatic. We're family." "I know exactly what we are," she said, no anger in her voice, only exhaustion. "And I also know what I'm going to do." Before he could answer, she ended the call. She took a deep breath. Then she dialed another number, this time for the library. She asked for Martha Simmons, the adult education coordinator. Martha had been a pupil of hers 30 years ago, back when Agnes still wore cardigans with elbow patches and carried a whistle in her handbag. "Mrs. Hartley." Martha's voice lit up. "Oh, I didn't realize it was you. I'm so sorry about the mix-up this morning. We thought the cancellation came from you." "It didn't," Agnes said gently. "But I've uncovered who did. That aside, is there any way I could still join the class? I was very much looking forward to it." Martha didn't hesitate. "We've had one late cancellation. If you can be here next Saturday, the place is yours." Agnes smiled, this time not from excitement, but from the quiet satisfaction of a battle regained. "Thank you, dear. I'll be there." After hanging up, she opened her biscuit tin and pulled out a small envelope she'd tucked away weeks ago, her emergency money. She counted the notes slowly, then placed them into her purse. Later that evening, as rain tapped gently on the windows, Marcus rang again. She let it go to voicemail. Claudia sent a message full of forced charm, saying how sorry they were for the misunderstanding and hoping Agnes wasn't upset. Agnes didn't reply. Instead, she took out a blank sheet of paper, opened her sketchbook, and began to draw. Not with pencil, but with a stylus, freshly charged and held steady in her hand. Saturday morning arrived with a pale shimmer over the rooftops of Southport. Agnes woke before the alarm, her mind alert. She dressed with care, dark trousers, a navy jumper, and her hair pinned in the tidy bun she used to wear when invigilating exams. In her bag, she placed her sketchbook, a pack of tissues, a spare battery for the stylus, and a small thermos of tea. She didn't tell Marcus she was going. She didn't need to. The library buzzed with soft activity when she arrived. Martha met her at the front, waving her over with a smile. "We've set up a tablet for you already. It's a bit newer than the ones you might have seen before, but I'm sure you'll get the hang of it." Agnes followed her into a quiet room at the back of the library. Several people were already seated, some younger than her by decades, others not much different in age. No one looked at her oddly. No one questioned her presence. For the first time in years, she felt like a student again. Curious. Slightly nervous. Entirely alive. The tutor, a woman in her 40s named Lena, welcomed everyone and began explaining the basics of digital painting. Layers, brushes, undo buttons. Agnes took it all in with quiet focus. Her hands were slower, yes, but deliberate. When others tapped too fast and undid their work by accident, she proceeded carefully, like handling a newborn bird. The first exercise was simple. Draw a tree. Agnes stared at the blank screen. Her fingers hesitated. Then she recalled the great oak that stood outside her childhood school. She remembered its twisting roots and the way the leaves used to catch the sun just before winter set in. With slow, confident strokes, she began to draw. Time slipped by unnoticed. Agnes didn't hear the whispers around her as others glanced at her work. She didn't see Lena quietly nodding at Martha, both impressed. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, recreating memory into art, turning something long buried into something newly formed. When the class ended, Lena approached her. "Have you done this before?" she asked gently. Agnes looked up, blinking. "No. But I've imagined it for a long time." Lena smiled. "Well, I hope you keep going. You've got a touch, Mrs. Hartley." Outside the library, the wind had picked up, rustling the crisp leaves along the pavement. Agnes walked home slower this time, her bag a little heavier with quiet pride. That afternoon, she made a cup of tea and sat in her sunlit lounge, tablet balanced on her knees. She opened a new file and began sketching once more. She didn't hear the front door creak open. She didn't hear Marcus's shoes on the tile floor. Only when he stood in the doorway, arms folded, did she look up. "You went anyway," he said flatly. Agnes didn't answer. She returned her gaze to the screen and adjusted the brush size. Marcus stepped forward. Are you going to talk to me, or just pretend this is normal? Still, she said nothing. Fine, he said after a long pause. Do what you want. As he turned to leave, she finally spoke. I always have. You just didn't notice. The following week passed with an odd silence hanging over the Hartley household. Marcus avoided coming by, and Claudia's messages were reduced to short, clipped updates about the grandchildren. Agnes replied politely but kept her distance, her time now spent between quiet painting sessions and long walks along the seafront, where gulls circled above and the waves whispered against the shore. On Thursday morning, while Agnes was sketching an old lifeboat hut perched above the rocks, her mobile buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made her stomach tighten. Claudia. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. Agnes, hi. I just thought we should talk. Agnes remained silent. Look, Marcus told me what happened. I didn't know he used your refund. He said it was just sitting there, and, well, that doesn't matter now. The point is, I'm sorry. A long pause followed. Agnes finally spoke, her voice soft but unmoved. Claudia, do you remember last Christmas? Claudia hesitated. What about it? You gave me a pair of oven mitts. Blue with snowflakes. Oh, yes. I thought they were lovely. They were. But what I remember most is what you said when I opened them. You said, now you can spend more time baking for us. Do you remember that? There was another pause. I didn't mean anything by it, Claudia mumbled. No, but it meant something to me. You see, for years now, I've been quietly handed roles without asking. The babysitter. The baker. The backup. No one asked what I wanted to do with my time. And when I found something for myself, Marcus took it away without a second thought. Claudia's voice cracked slightly. We didn't mean to make you feel invisible. Agnes didn't respond to that. Instead, she ended the call gently and slipped her phone into her coat pocket. The next Saturday, she arrived early at the library, the autumn air crisp and clean. As she entered the digital art room, she noticed something new. Her sketch from the week before, the oak tree, was pinned on the wall, printed and displayed beside the others. Her cheeks flushed with surprise. Martha approached with a cup of tea in a paper cup. I hope you don't mind, she said. Lena thought it might encourage some of the others. Agnes stared at it for a moment, then nodded. Thank you. It means more than you know. As the class began, Agnes found herself smiling more. She asked questions, made a small joke about having to triple-check before clicking undo, and even helped a younger student who was struggling with shading. At the end of the session, Lena pulled her aside. There's an exhibition in December. Local artists. Mostly amateurs and hobbyists, but it's a lovely event. Would you consider submitting something? Agnes was caught off guard. Me? Lena nodded. You. Agnes looked at her hands. At the stylus between her fingers. Then at the wall where her oak tree stood proudly. I'll think about it, she said, smiling. And for the first time in months, she meant it. The morning light was soft when Agnes opened the top drawer of the sideboard in the sitting room. She was searching for her old sketchbook, the one with pages of pencil drawings from decades ago. She hadn't looked through it in years, but something about the way her digital pieces were evolving made her long to see where it had all begun. As she shuffled through neatly folded napkins and old letters, her hand brushed against a small velvet pouch. She paused. Slowly, she pulled it out and opened the drawstring. Inside was a necklace. Delicate, silver, with a small teardrop of lapis lazuli at the center. The very one Claudia had worn last Christmas. The very one Marcus had insisted was an early anniversary gift for his wife. Agnes stared at it. So this was where it ended up. She held it in her palm, the weight slight but unmistakable. Her mouth set into a thin line. She walked to the hallway, opened the cupboard, and retrieved a showbox marked papers. Inside were old receipts, insurance forms, and a few discolored postcards. She rifled through the contents until she found a crumpled refund slip from the community center. It was addressed to Margaret Hartley, a name the administrator had miswritten instead of Agnes, but it had her old email, the one Marcus had access to. The refund had been issued to a joint account she once shared with Marcus before he married. A bitter tightness coiled in her chest. Agnes returned to the sitting room and placed the necklace on the coffee table. She sat, unmoving, her mind spinning. She had always believed Marcus's behavior stemmed from worry about her being alone, about her age, her routine, her safety. But now it felt like something else. Something colder. Control. The sound of the front door startled her. Marcus's voice called out, casual. "Mum. I brought the kids by, Claudia's at the salon." Agnes didn't reply. He appeared in the doorway a moment later, holding 2 plastic bags filled with juice boxes and crackers. Behind him, Olivia and Sam bounded in. "Gran!" Olivia ran forward and hugged her legs. Agnes rested her hand gently on the girl's head but didn't take her eyes off Marcus. He set the bags down. "I didn't know you'd be in. Thought I'd give you a nice surprise." Agnes stood and walked past him, into the hallway. She returned with the velvet pouch and placed it in his hand. Marcus frowned. "Where'd you find this?" "In my drawer." "Where you left it after you used my class refund to pay for it?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "Mum, it was just lying there. The center said you'd cancelled. I thought you changed your mind." She folded her arms. "No. You changed it for me. Like you've been doing for years." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" She pointed toward the sketch pinned on the wall. "Do you see that? That is the first thing I've done for myself in years that wasn't about someone else." The children, sensing the tension, had gone quiet. Marcus tried to soften. "Mum, I didn't mean any harm. I thought you didn't need it." Agnes looked him in the eyes. "I need a great many things. But most of all, I need you to stop deciding what I'm allowed to want." Marcus stood silent. After a beat, she stepped back. "Take the necklace. Or don't. But I'm keeping the rest." He nodded slowly, uncertain. Then turned toward the door. Olivia tugged his sleeve. "Are we still staying, Daddy?" He hesitated. Agnes knelt beside her granddaughter. "You'll come next week, darling. Gran's got something special planned." As they left, Agnes returned to the sideboard and carefully opened the old sketchbook. The pages smelled faintly of dust and pencil graphite. And on the last page, an unfinished sketch of a little boy. Big eyes. Soft cheeks. She smiled, traced the outline with her fingertip, then turned the page. It was time for something new. November came with sheets of rain and wind that whipped the hedgerows bare. Agnes spent most of her afternoons by the bay window, painting digitally with her tablet resting on a stack of hardback novels. Her movements were more confident now, her palette richer, and though her subjects still held the quiet stillness of trees, teacups, and seascapes, they now shimmered with a warmth she hadn't realized was missing before. One Thursday, as she returned from the market with a bag of apples and bread, she found an envelope on the mat. Cream paper. Hand-addressed. She recognized the writing immediately, ornate and a touch dramatic. Martha. Inside was a folded card. Elegant lettering announced. North Shore Community Arts Exhibition. December 14th, 6 p.m. You are formally invited to showcase your work. Below was a note written in blue ink. Agnes. We've reserved you a space. Lena says your oak tree was a class favorite. We all hope you'll join us. Warmest wishes. Martha. Agnes pressed the card to her chest. Her fingers trembled slightly. She hadn't exhibited anything since her school days. The idea of standing in a room full of strangers as they viewed her work was at once thrilling and terrifying. She placed the invitation on the mantelpiece, next to an old photograph of herself with Jeffrey taken in Whitby in 1982. He was laughing in the picture, his arm around her, windswept and young. Her eyes lingered on his face for a moment. Then she turned away. Over the next few days, Agnes worked late into the night, hunched over her screen with the curtains drawn tight. She tried landscapes, abstract shapes, even a portrait of her granddaughter Olivia reading by the window. But nothing felt right. She would begin with enthusiasm, then slowly frown, swipe the screen, and start again. On the fourth night, frustrated and bleary-eyed, she opened the old sketchbook again. Her gaze drifted to the unfinished drawing of young Marcus. She traced the lines softly, then turned to a blank page. She began to sketch, slowly, without plan or pressure. The next morning, she returned to the digital studio and began recreating that drawing. This time not of Marcus as a child, but of herself, as she saw herself now. A woman with lines on her face, soft grays in her hair, eyes that had seen joy and disappointment alike. She painted with a mixture of honesty and pride. No flourishes. No attempt to impress. Just truth. When it was finished, she stared at the screen, heart pounding. Then she saved the file, backed it up twice, and printed 2 copies, one on cream cardstock, the other on textured linen paper. The following week, Lena sent her the final layout of the exhibition wall. Her name was listed neatly under the heading, New Voices. Agnes Hartley. One piece. Untitled. The night before the exhibition, she stood before the mirror in her bedroom, smoothing the creases in her navy wool dress. She added a simple silver brooch and tied a silk scarf around her neck, one she hadn't worn in years. Then, she took the necklace, the lapis lazuli one, and placed it in a wooden box lined with cotton. She tucked it into the bottom drawer of her dresser without a word. As she turned off the lights and climbed into bed, she felt something settle in her chest, not excitement, not fear, but readiness. The chill of winter had settled fully over North Shore by the time the community hall lit up on the evening of the exhibition. Fairy lights wound around beams, their glow softened by sprigs of holly and ivy. Inside, the scent of mulled wine, wax polish, and damp wool coats mingled in the air. Agnes arrived just after 6, walking carefully in her low-heeled boots across the cobbled pavement. She held a small tote bag close to her side, containing a sketchpad and tissues, though she had no idea why she had packed either. The main hall was buzzing. Local painters, students, and curious villagers milled about the artworks, some framed, others hung from string or resting on wooden easels. There were abstracts, portraits, collages made from broken ceramics. It was a beautiful chaos. Lena spotted Agnes first and rushed over, cheeks flushed. You made it. I was beginning to worry. Agnes smiled, her nerves tucked neatly beneath her scarf. I wouldn't miss it. Lena led her through the crowd to the far side of the hall, where a modest wall space had been reserved under the soft halo of an overhead lamp. A white placard read, Agnes Hartley. Untitled. Below it, mounted carefully, was Agnes's digital portrait, her self-portrait. Rendered in muted tones, her expression was both solemn and strong, a trace of defiance in the lift of her chin. For a moment, she forgot the crowd. She simply looked. Someone behind her murmured, "That's real. That's brave." Another voice added, "It's like she's lived 5 lives, all in one glance." Agnes turned and found a pair of teenagers with sketchbooks watching the portrait. They looked at her and then back at the art without realizing it was the same person. She didn't correct them. She wandered the hall in intervals, sipping lukewarm cider from a paper cup. She bumped into Martha, who was wearing a velvet jacket and holding court among retired poets. "You look radiant, darling," Martha said, pulling her into a light hug. "I always knew you had something to say with your hands. Now everyone else does too." Agnes laughed gently. "I didn't think anyone would even notice it." Martha raised a brow. "Oh, they've noticed." As the evening progressed, more visitors stopped at her wall. Some lingered, others took photos. One woman, clearly moved, scribbled something in the guestbook beside the display. Agnes didn't look straight away. It wasn't until nearly 9 that a familiar voice rose behind her. "Agnes." She turned slowly. Geoffrey stood by the door, a long coat draped over one arm. His face was lined deeper than she remembered, but his posture was straight, eyes scanning the room with caution. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Agnes said. "I wasn't sure I should." He looked past her to the portrait. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "You look real." Agnes said nothing. She waited. "I read about the exhibition in the local paper. Said your name. I had to see it myself." Still she said nothing. She wanted to let silence speak first. Finally, he nodded. "Well, you've done something good here." Agnes tilted her head. "No thanks to you." His mouth twitched. A ghost of a smile. "Regret? I know. I wasn't a very kind man." She looked at him fully now, and in that look, there was no rage left. No desire to win. "You were scared," she said. He looked down, then back up. "Still. With a brief nod, she turned away, not in anger, but in peace. She returned to the guestbook and finally glanced at the open page. In uneven but careful handwriting, someone had written, "This is what becoming yourself looks like. Thank you for the permission." 2 weeks after the exhibition, the quietness of Agnes's cottage felt less like isolation and more like rest. The rush of preparation, the flood of faces, the strange comfort of validation, all had ebbed away. What remained was silence, and within it, a new rhythm of calm. One grey afternoon, the sea fog rolled inland like soft smoke. Agnes sat by the window with a cup of tea and a tartan blanket over her knees, her sketchpad balanced open on her lap. She hadn't drawn anything for days, but she didn't mind. Art no longer felt like something she had to prove, it was simply a part of her now, like the lines on her hands or the salt in her hair. The doorbell rang. She shuffled slowly to answer it, expecting the postman or perhaps Lena. But when she opened the door, no one was there. Just a thick envelope on the mat, sealed neatly in brown paper, her name written in bold pen. Inside was a letter. And beneath it, something heavier, an old photograph. She sat back down and opened the letter carefully. "Dear Mum, I don't know how to start this properly. But I've been thinking about the night of the exhibition, and what I saw. Not just the painting, though that was incredible. I saw something else. You. The real you. For a long time, I think I was afraid to see it. Maybe because it meant facing what I didn't do, or say. I let Chloe speak for us both when I shouldn't have. I let myself believe that being a father meant controlling everything, even you. I see now how wrong that was. I found this photo a week ago. It's from that seaside holiday in Devon, you're painting shells on the deck, wearing that ridiculous straw hat. I think I tore it out of an album once when I was angry. I'm sorry for that. I've kept it hidden in my drawer ever since. I'm sending it back to you because I think it belongs where it can be seen again. I've enrolled Emma in a weekend art course. She saw your work and asked if she could learn too. I thought you might like to take her to the first session, if you're free. You don't have to say yes. Just think about it. Love. Daniel. Agnes stared at the page for a long time, her eyes stinging in the dim light. She picked up the photograph. It was faded, the colors washed thin, but unmistakable. There she was, sitting on a sun-bleached chair, her bare feet tucked under her, laughing as she dabbed paint onto a small stone. Daniel must have been just 8 or 9. In the background, a tiny bucket balanced upside down on the sand, a crab's claw poking out from underneath. She ran her fingers over the photo's edge. Then, almost without realizing, she reached for her sketchpad and pencil. Lines began to form, soft and wavy, unhurried. The shape of a straw hat. The bend of a small boy's arm. A smile that had lasted through decades, now finally drawn again. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing the outline of the sea.